Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is Executive Leadership and Engagement in the Time of Crisis, Day 3. Your instructor today is Dr. William Latchford, President of Native Peacekeeper Consulting Group, LLC. My name is Alyssa Atkins, and today I will be your webinar facilitator. I am the Training and Development Coordinator for the Native Learning Center. A quick disclaimer before we get started. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. Also displayed here is our copyright infringement law. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar presentation materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. You can access today's presentation slides available for download, as well as the rest of the webinar materials in the courses page on the left-hand side where it says courses on the red section. Just please keep in mind, if you click that red section, you will be taken out of the webinar. So just keep that in mind if you do click that red side for the courses. If you do get kicked out, you can easily join back in by clicking on the green bar. Once you click the green bar, it will conduct an audio test before bringing you into the webinar. Please always select listen only to avoid any audio feedback during the webinar. If you wish to change the speaker you are hearing from the audio, if you are hearing the webinar audio from, you can do so by clicking this phone icon. It will bring up a list of your speaker/mic devices, so you can select the one you prefer. And then some ways you can interact during today's webinar is going to be the chat box all the way at the bottom. This is how you can ask all your questions to Will, and Dr. Will will be more than happy to answer them for you. As we get started, let's introduce ourselves in the chat. Please write your name, where you're joining from, your work or role in Indian country, and your tribal affiliation. A final note, please remember, if you click the red side, you will be taken out, but have no fear. If you log back on and click the green bar, you will be taken back in today's webinar. And with that being said, I am happy to pass it back over to Will.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins. I apologize. For some reason, my camera is having some technical difficulties, so I apologize. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the audio part of today's webinar. So I'd like to welcome you and thank you for taking the time out of your day to participate in this number 3 webinar out of a 4 webinar series. The last one will be tomorrow, titled Fostering Resilience and a Guide to Tribal Leadership. So the whole foundation of these 4 webinars is to just provide some wisdom in relation to your daily activity as a leader that you can use not only on an average day, but also when crises occur. And from crises could be just an employee issue all the way down to a major community issue that's impacted because of a man-made or human-caused or just a natural disaster within your community. So we appreciate you being on today. I hope you're able to pull a little bit of information from this webinar that you can use on your daily basis to enhance your journey as a leader in your organization. A little bit about Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. We're a consultant group organization that provides enhanced leadership, threat assessments, policy enhancement, educational foundation organization. It's owned by Amy Osceola Latchford, who's a member of the Seminole Tribe of Florida. It is a small business associated certified business, Native woman-owned business. And our whole goal under Amy's leadership is to ensure that we enhance everybody that we come across, that we enhance their professional growth, to allow them to take the experience that we have garnered over our careers and to allow that knowledge, skill, and ability to be transposed across Indian country and anybody who's willing to just enhance their overall professionalism. So the organization has consultants that are across the country with over 175 years in total experience, to include in Canada. So it's made up of consultants that are former police chiefs, executives of Fortune 500 companies, attorneys, special agents in charge of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and emergency management sectors of public safety professions. So we have a great team with Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group, and really it's all about giving back and taking what we learned over our careers to enhance the rest of Indian country and anybody that we can improve their day-to-day business. So as Ms. Atkins indicated, my name is Will Latchford. I'm a doctor of criminology. I've had the opportunity to start my career as a police officer over 30 years ago with the Seminole Tribe of Florida. I was able to transgress through the public safety world and retiring in April of 2023 as the executive director of public safety for the Seminole Tribe. Through that opportunity, I was able to garner leadership experience, not just from the educational background, but also from the communities that the tribe has, along with Native communities across the country. I was able to deploy across Indian country and the United States to work in Indian country, and also municipalities and counties, that allowed me to kind of formalize my makeup today, which is able to bring a core leadership presence to everybody that I come across. So my educational background, again, is a doctor of criminology. I have a master's degree in Homeland Security and a bachelor's degree in public administration. I was able to, through the opportunity with the tribe, I was able to attend the highest level of leadership courses throughout the country, FBI National Academy, FBI LEDA, and the University of Louisville Command Officers Development course that really was able to define a good core leadership that takes care of people. And that's really what leadership is. It's getting work done through others and take care of the people. And those people range from subordinates in your organization all the way down to the community that you serve. So it's very important to me as we progress through any type of training that we always keep at the forefront of our training and our thought process and our daily work is to look at the people we serve, and everything we do should be based on putting them first and putting their needs in the best interest to ensure that they're taken care of and their community is at the highest level it can be, regards to safety or even just the technical aspect of bringing a service to any organization. The community should be the priority always. Before we get started, this is just a disclaimer for Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group that we have in all our trainings. Training is important, but the content presented in this training is designed to provide a comprehensive, up-to-date information and guidance. In the event that any information or advice shared here appears to contradict your organization's policies or procedures, please defer to your organization's official guidelines and protocols. Your policies of your organization is very important to me, as I know it's important to you. And as you navigate through your profession and your organization, if a policy is right, wrong, or indifferent, it's something you definitely want to follow. And if there is issues or contradictions, you take the right course to amend that policy to get it in line with the proper procedure. But as we go through the training today, if you do acknowledge some contradiction or there's some issues that you have questions with, always defer back to your policy and get clarification from your leadership team. So why is crisis communication, why does it matter? As a leader, you don't have the ability or the authority, once you're provided that title, to abdicate your authority. Once you accept that challenge of being a leader, You cannot give that power away. You cannot give that authority away that you have. So you have to embrace that, right? And when you embrace that, there's several areas that come to the forefront that you always have to keep in mind. And you have to keep in mind when you make decisions as a leader. You want to protect your community. Effective crisis communication is very clear when you have crisis communication. You want to make sure health and safety and the well-being of your community is at the forefront of everything you do. As I indicated earlier, and you will hear me repeat it throughout the training, is that the community should always be first. So when you base decisions as a leader and you go through just your normal day activity as a leader, which you're going to hit some crises along your normal day, or that big crisis that comes along, you always want to put the community first. You put the community first, the organization and the mission of the organization second, and the employees' needs third. So you always want to make sure, and when you progress through your decision making, as we talked yesterday, is the community is always first, and it's important for your success that you recognize from the standpoint of who's the priority of your customer. That will assist you in maintaining trust. You just don't get trust just because you have a title. You have to build on it, and once you build on it, you may get trust, but in order for you to keep it, you have to work at it. You have to maintain that trust, including during uncertain times. So when you have an average day and there's nothing happening in your community or in your organization, it's really fun to lead. It's fun when you don't have that stress. It's fun when things are just moving along and everybody's getting along and there's no adversity, right? It gives you that downtime. However, a true leader is defined when that adversity and that challenge hits. And that's where that trust comes into play. Where are you going to step up to maintain that trust? Because people can trust you when things are going good. The reality is when things break bad in your community or your organization, trust still has to be intact. And in order for it to stay intact, you have to continue to work and build on that. And your decision making during that crisis is very important. Your communication during that crisis is important because that's going to impact the trust. It also brings to your reputation, right? You should never lead through your position worrying about your reputation. Your reputation is very important, but you shouldn't worry about that based on everything that you do. You're going to do it based on you. You should never put you first as a leader. Putting you first as a leader is actually going to ruin your reputation, right? You want to help safeguard your reputation, your organization's reputation, by ensuring long-term success and stability for your organization. And by doing that is by putting others first and focusing on the right thing to do at the right time because it's the right way to do business. It's always about doing right. It's never about doing right for you. It's about doing right for the customers that you serve. As we look at developing a crisis communication plan, it's very important as the tribal leader that you have a crisis communication plan and a Bible or a holy grail that you can follow. And it's important that if you don't have that the simple thing is you can fix that. You can start today to develop what that crisis communication plan is. And it's not one of those plans that you're just going to make and put on a bookshelf and then dust it off every time a crisis happens. You want this Bible and this holy grail that you use for your communication plan to use throughout every day that you come to work, that you go to work. If you're leading people and you're leading a community, this crisis communication plan should always be your framework that you work off when things are quiet and there is no crisis, or is there a very small crisis that is consistent in your community, or that big crisis that occurs that now is outside of that everyday activity, and it's something new that you have to deal with. The crisis communication plan you can use as the framework to build off of, and by building off of that, it provides a good solution or a good starting point that you can use to work through the crisis you're going through. So in this plan, you want to make sure you define your goals. You want to make sure that you clearly identify what you want in achieving with your communication. Now, this is at different layers, because if you're a tribal leader, you have the subordinates that work directly under you, which are probably your executives or your program directors, and then you have the subordinates under them. The key to any type of communication is to, especially as a tribal leader, is you want to make sure that the message you send out internally for your organization to your employees and your work staff, by the time it hits the boots on the ground and the people below, that message needs to be the same. Many a times in between the top tier of an organization to the bottom tier of the organization, the messaging gets lost somewhere in the middle. And it's so very important to have this communication plan that you, as the tribal leader and the top executive of the organization, that you always recognize the fact you have to work to make sure that that communication is stable, it stays consistent, and when you send a message out at your level, that by the time it gets to boots on the ground, it's going to be the same as if you were talking to those individuals as if you were there right in front of them. So somebody else can push the message to them, but when they push the message to them, it's going to be the same priority, the same communication, the same empathy that you have should be provided to the lowest level of the organization. The other part of defining your goals when it comes to communication is your community. That's a whole nother aspect as a leader. So there's different layers that you have to look at. You have the internal piece of the organization, which is your employee workforce, and then you have the actual community that you serve. And it's very important that that messaging is defined before that crisis occurs. You want to know what your game plan is prior to the crisis occurring. So when you look at your goals, make sure you identify which layers that you're going to have. You're going to have the internal layers of the organization. You'll have the community layers of the organizations. You may have an outside layer that goes into your business world. You may have a business structure that is inside your tribe that is totally different from your community. It's totally different from your workforce, but there's a business section in there that you have to communicate with. There's your partners outside of the reservation that you may have to deal with, from the federal government, maybe the local or state government if you deal with them, or other tribal governments. So when you define your goals, it's very important to identify who those key stakeholders are, and then create those layers that will provide that opportunity for you just to have that framework to work off of. And if you have that in writing, it's a lot easier as you're going through the crisis. You have that Bible or that Holy Grail that you can just relate to. You may have to modify as you progress through this communication plan, and that's what it's really all about. It's about having that framework and then modifying it to work and be successful during that time. In the plan, you want to establish the communication channels. Select the most effective ways to reach your audience, and we'll go over a couple of different formats later on during the presentation that I'll pass to you that I think are successful platforms that you can use to get some messaging out internally and externally. But you want to make sure that that format is effective, whatever format you use. If it's through email, if it's through social media, if it's through a emergency broadcast system that you can use, you want to make sure that this is part of your plan. So when the crisis happens, your adrenaline and your adversity doesn't take over to where you have mind block, where you're kind of sitting there stagnant, not really knowing what to do. This plan will help you through that, that adversity and that challenge. Part of the plan, you want to make sure the assigned roles and responsibilities are in your plan. You want to designate specific individuals to manage different aspects of crisis communication. So you want to make sure your employees understand what their roles are and who's around you, what their responsibilities are that they're going to have to carry out through your leadership. Right? So leadership, as we know, and you'll hear me repeat this, is that leadership is about getting work done through others. So as a leader, sometimes we take things upon ourselves because we feel doing it ourselves, we can get it done faster, we can do it better. And why let somebody else do it if there's a chance they're going to screw it up? Well, the goal as a leader is not to look at it that way. The goal of a leader is to get the work done through others. And by doing that, you got to give the others the opportunity to make those mistakes and progress through growing and understanding what your expectations are. And so if you can do that before the crisis goes, when the crisis happens, you all will be in line to where the messaging will be consistent from the top tier, which is you as the tribal leader, to the bottom boots on the ground employees. As we look at strategic communication planning, we want to look at the timing. Timing certainly matters when it comes to each situation. And when timing matters in each situation, there's not one situation that's going to be the same. So we have to strategically look and keep that mental note that when a crisis happens, we have to look at how we're going to communicate, when we're going to communicate, and that process we're going to communicate through. We want to make sure that the message is clear. We want to draft clear, concise messages, and we want to make sure they're accurate. A lot of times we communicate through our own lens and our own knowledge and our own ability, right? We need to recognize as leaders that sometimes people aren't at our level. Sometimes the community has to have it delivered to them a certain way so they understand, what is in it for them, right? You want them to have ownership of the crisis. You want them to have that confidence that you're doing the job and you're the best leader, you're the best person in that position. So sometimes communicating as if you would do every day from your lens may not get that message across to the community. So understanding the community's level and how to communicate that to them is very important when you look at message clarity. You want to look at what type of audience that you have to communicate with, right? So if you're doing a promotion within your department or your program, for example, or in your tribe, and you're going to promote somebody or have an open position to promote somebody, and you're not going to pick anybody within the organization, before you pick somebody out of the organization, you want to look at the audience that may affect. If you bring somebody in to from the outside to fill a position without giving the people in the organization an opportunity, that may create some adverse reaction from those employees. So to eliminate that crisis that you're going to go through, put the explanation out. You want to identify who that target audience is, and you want to make sure that you communicate your expectations and your direction and the reason why. A lot of people, when we look at what target audience we should identify to communicate with, all they want to do is know. They just want to know the information. Sometimes if you don't communicate with people, they feel left out. You don't want that to happen. You want people to be part of the process so they can take ownership, and you'll get the support. And that will help drive, as I talked about earlier, your reputation. You won't have to worry about your reputation, because doing the right thing at the right time, because it's the right thing to do, will solidify a strong reputation for yourself. So make sure you identify who your audience is when you communicate with individuals. Another key aspect of that is active listening. A lot of times as a leader, we get in this position because people look at us as we're supposed to have all the answers. We're supposed to be the ones that know everything at the snap of a finger. And society has developed a strong mentality because of social media. We can Google something and we're getting the answer within a millisecond. That expectation is the same as leaders. Well, the reality is, as humans, we can't react that fast. And sometimes we don't have the answer that's going to be as quick as Google or social media has. So as we progress through things, we want to make sure we listen to the community, but also have a response to the community that can allow them to understand that we may not have the answer right now, but we're going to get it for you, and we're going to bring it back to you, right? So, and we can project what the future is going to be, or the path of that future through our decision making. So you want to make sure that you monitor the community's concerns, make the necessary adjustments, not just to make them happy. I'm a big believer in, you don't make decisions to make people happy. You make decisions because it's the right thing to do in the right circumstance. And by making the right decision in the right circumstance, you're going to be successful. You're not going to make everybody happy. There is not one circumstance in my 29 years of leadership that have I been able to make everybody happy. If you have two people, one person's not going to be happy. Don't focus on making people happy. Focus on doing the right thing, always doing the right thing in the right circumstance, because it's the right thing to do. So you want to make sure that you give the community the ample time and that opportunity to voice their concerns to you, so you can develop a really good, strong communication plan in non-threatening settings and also during crisis management. Let's talk a little bit about the digital media. As I talked about before, I'll share some platforms that you may want to look at to help you manage during a crisis, right? So rapid dissemination of information. You know, as I talked about, social media is very quick. So sometimes before you as a leader gets the information, somebody's putting it on social media, right? So they're either putting a picture out there or they're talking about it, and you as the leader may be in a meeting and you just, you know, the information hasn't made it to you fast enough. That happens, right? And that's going to continue to happen. However, you don't want to focus on the fact of, okay, the information has to come to me so fast to where people are really losing the goal of the crisis. The goal of the crisis is to get through the crisis, minimizing any impact of the crisis, and then work through the crisis so you can be stronger as the crisis ends. You can continue to be resilient in your community. So there's a couple of platforms that you look at that I think are important once you get the information and you want to put your message out. And I indicate these platforms to you not as a salesperson. I don't endorse one over the other. These are just platforms that I'm familiar with out there that I've seen work. They've been successful in different communities. There's not one platform that I would say is better for a community than another. I think the platforms have to be evaluated by you as the leader to see what works for you, and then take those platforms and test them in your community to see what's going to be best for you, for your operations, and for your community. So as we look at the platforms, there's a platform that's called Nexus, Nexus. There's Alert Media that's out there. There's a program, Everbridge, and there's another program called Code Red. So those 4 platforms are ones that I'm very familiar with. I've seen them work. They're very productive. They can provide that opportunity for you to deliver text messages out, deliver social media messages out. They're able to deliver phone calls out, emails out that can help you when you go to disseminate your messages throughout the crisis. So it also provides an opportunity so where you could track the messages that you put out. So monitoring the public and kind of what's going on in the community, it gives you the opportunity to use these platforms to stay ahead of the game. Don't put yourself in a position to where you're in competition with social media. Social media, you're never going to be in competition with social media because individuals have so much access to social media. They're putting stuff out. It may not be accurate, or it may not be the entire facts of the crisis you're going through. Don't focus on that. Focus on the core mission to make sure your community is clearly communicated with, provides that opportunity to get the information out and get it out in a reasonable time, so they know that you as the leader is the best person to handle the situation that they're going through. So you just want to make sure that the message you send to your community is that you recognize the problem, that they're going through, but you as the leader has taken that problem on your shoulders, and you're the right person to deal with that problem, and you've taken that problem and you've made it your problem, and you're going to navigate your employee workforce, navigate the community, and you're going to find a solution to work through that crisis so everybody gets through it together and you're stronger as you get through it. How do you get there? You want to build trust and you want to be authentic when you're doing it. You always have to be transparent from the standpoint of your workforce and your community. Being honest and transparent about what you know and what you don't know is so important. A lot of leaders sometimes spin their messaging because they're afraid if they tell the community that they don't know, that they're going to have some negative issues, right? As a leader, you want to build the confidence up. You want to build that command presence to your community. You want that community to know that you're the right person, not because of they know you, not because that you've done something for them in the past. You want them to know that you're the right person, because if you don't have the answers, you're going to go find the answers and you're going to implement those answers. You're going to find that solution, implement the solution, and you're going to make sure that they're brought through the crisis without anybody getting hurt or any damage done to your community. So you want them to know that you have empathy for what they're going through. You're going to be honest with them. You're going to acknowledge the process of what's happening. You're going to acknowledge their concerns, right? And that's by talking to them and listening to what their concerns are. Acknowledge them. There's nothing wrong with telling them that they're right, and you're going to work on a solution to give you that opportunity to find that solution so you can move on together, right? The key to leadership is to get the buy-in for people around you, either internally in your organization or in your community. So if you show empathy and you progress through navigating this crisis with the outlook that you're going to be the best leader for the individuals that you're dealing with, and you're going to do it through your empathy. You're going to go through your emotions and your kind-heartedness, but you're doing it in the best outlook for them. And if they understand that and they can feel that from you as a leader, you're going to get that work done through others, and they're going to support you. Part of being a leader is always being consistent, right? So you don't want to send different messages out. You don't want to send conflicting messages out. So you want to make sure from your level at the top of the tier all the way down to the bottom is that the consistent message is always being put out. So if you're putting out messaging to your top tier leadership or your leadership team, you have to make sure that the bottom understands what that consistent message is. You don't want to have a message put out to your top tier and then the bottom or the boots on the ground are telling the community, well, we don't know what's happening. We haven't been told anything. A lot of time that happens. That happens because somewhere in the middle or at the top, around the top tier, the information's not being put out. There are occasions where the leader is the problem. But a lot of the times the leader puts the messaging out, and by the time it gets down to the bottom, it gets diluted. So you want to make sure that your messaging is consistent and all communication channels across whatever platform you're using is sending the same message. As you go through the crisis, you want to make sure your ethical and integrity practices are in line with doing the right thing. You want to respect people's privacy. You want to handle personal information with care and discretion. Sometimes there's a thought process that people are owed information when it comes to others' personal information. You as the leader have to be the one to communicate that out. So you want to be very protective of people's personal information. There's also laws that surround that. So you want to make sure that you're in tune and you're very well versed on the laws when it comes to privacy information. You could still put a message out, but you don't have to be so specific when it comes to personal information. And that will help the community as well, just putting a generalized message out. You want to avoid speculating, right? So you want to make sure as you communicate, you don't assume. Do not put anything out that's an assumption or your assumption. Because when you assume, you know what happens then. People then take that and they're going down this path, and ultimately they come to the end and they realize that all the information they had is wrong. Never assume. It's okay to say, I don't know that. Let me go find that out and I'll come back to you. So there's nothing wrong with acknowledging the aspect of you don't know, but you're going to go find out. Let them know that you're taking their question or their information to heart, and you're going to get that answer and you're going to bring it back to them. They'll be a lot better off if you do it that way instead of assuming and providing them information that may or may not be true. You want to be accountable. You want to be accountable to yourself and be accountable to the community. Take responsibilities for your actions and acknowledge any mistakes. If you acknowledge the mistakes and then you give the solution how you're fixing the mistake and that you're being held accountable, you're holding yourself accountable, then the community is going to be more accepting, right? None of us are perfect, right? And the reality is we all strive for perfection, especially being a leader. You strive for perfection, but the reality is none of us are perfect. So we're going to make mistakes. Our staff's going to make mistakes. You as a leader, you get the praise when things are going great, right? The reality is also your employees get the praise when things are going great, and they should get the praise because they're the boots on the ground. They're doing the work. They should get recognized for doing a good job. However, when they don't do a good job and they make mistakes and those mistakes are exposed, you as the leader are going to take the responsibility. You're going to take the harsh criticism for that. That's part of being a leader, right? And that's okay. How you progress through that is just as important, and progress through that by acknowledging that the staff made an error. It wasn't done through malicious intent. However, you recognize the mistake, and this is how you're fixing it, and let the community know what steps you're taking in place when there is that error. You also want to let the community know how you're fixing it, right? So you're fixing the issue for the solution, but you also can let them know how you're dealing with the employee if there is those circumstances where you're going to give retraining, you're going to give progressive discipline. You want to make sure that the community is confident in your leadership. And so there's nothing wrong with taking the responsibility of others and acknowledging those mistakes, but also putting in the solution and what you're doing to make things better. Your community will appreciate you more for that. People will respect you more for that, for being honest and recognizing that you're being transparent. Crisis impacts everyone differently, and it's important as a tribal leader that you lead with ethical consideration, right? So it's clear that at any crisis, regardless if you're in Indian country or anywhere else in an organization, it's so important to lead with ethical consideration, with ethical communication, so people have the confidence in your leadership ability. The power of proactive communication. One of the things I learned throughout my career in leadership is that people thrive on getting information, right? So everyone has their own stories, and I'm sure you've watched how there's been information that was brought to you, and it may not have been factual, and it could be through the rumor mill that people get excited when they're fed information, right? So from a leadership standpoint, you have the opportunity to be proactive with your communication. So if you can create a plan, a communication plan on an everyday basis where you're building those relationships by just fostering strong communication channels with your employee base, with your communities, that's going to get you ahead. That proactive communication is so important to where you're not reactive. So if you're doing it on a daily basis and you're communicating information out, right? And it's got to be valid information. It's got to be information that it's going to be relevant to your audience. It's just not checking a box, right? So you want to make sure you build those relationships by being proactive with your communication. It could be an educational message or an informal message that you're putting out to your community. One of the things that I've learned is that you can put out messages every day or every other day, which are leadership briefs or leadership nuggets that you can call. You can call it whatever title that you want, but what it does, it draws people to you to let them see that you're on the top of your game every day. You're being proactive. You're communicating with them. If it's through just the training information, if it's through information that the community can benefit from, if it's through something that you're going through in your organization and you just want to share with the community from a positive standpoint, let people know that you're around and you're communicating. And as you do that, your communication skills are going to get better every day because you're practicing those communication drills. Without you even realizing, you're preparing yourself when that crisis happens. Your communication skills are really going to be at the top of the game because you're doing it every day. You're sending messages out every day. You're talking to the community. You're getting feedback. And when that crisis hits, all it is, it's ballooned up. The crisis is something you deal with every day. However, it's in a balloon setting. It's been exposed. You have a short time to fix it, or the emotions are so high. You're doing that every day without that crisis going on. So if you can build your relationships up through daily communications, through the education, either through education, messaging or just, you know, leadership traits from you out to the community and your subordinates, you will practice communications every day, and you can look at how you're doing it. You can look at what works and what doesn't work, and how your community is accepting your philosophy and your delivery. Your delivery is just as important as the information you put out. So if your delivery has a negative tone to it, it doesn't matter how great the information you're putting out. They're going to focus on your delivery. They're not going to focus on the messaging that you're putting out. So that this gives you the opportunity, when the crisis isn't there, it gives you the opportunity to self-reflect on yourself, to practice your communication skills, practice how you're sending information out, practice how you're getting information from external sources and internal sources, and then how you're turning that around to build the integrity up to send a message out. So it's important that you look at being proactive when it comes to communicating in your environment. Here's a couple of nuggets that I put in that I think are important, that you can use when effective communication is occurring during a crisis, right? The number one thing is staying calm. When, again, nothing's going on, we can sit and we can relax. But when that bell rings, how do we handle it? Do we stay calm, or do we turn from 0 to 60 and we become the Tasmanian devil when it comes to providing service to our subordinates, to the community? We want to stay calm through all the crisis. And the reason for that is people are looking at you for the leadership. They're looking at you to take care of them. They're looking at you to provide great guidance. So if you're out of control and you're not controlling your emotions, then they're going to look at you. The whole situation is out of control. You don't want that to happen. So continue to stay calm. You know, take a breath. Sometimes you got to take a breath as a leader. Go in your office, shut the door, just count to 20, you know, and give yourself the opportunity to stay calm. Being a leader in a crisis is difficult, but if you have that title as a leader, inherently you have the responsibility to make sure you do the right thing and you always stay calm. You want to assess the situation. That means don't do that by yourself. Use the resources around you. And that's why it's so important as a leader on an everyday basis. You surround yourself with the right people, not because of who they are or who they know. You want to surround yourself with the right people because they're the best people that are going to do the job. And by assessing the situation, you'll be able to take that information and that honest information, and you'll be able to assess the situation to make a sound judgment on what direction your organization should go. You want to prioritize the information. That's part of that assessing the situation. Once you assess it, you're going to start prioritizing the information and layer it out as far as what's going to be done first, what needs to be done second, and so on. You want to make sure that that information you're getting is factual, and it may change. You may get new information, but if you're working off the success of the confidence of the people around you providing you the right information, you're going to be able to prioritize your plan and continue to move forward to get through the crisis. Again, you want to communicate clear. You want to make sure that messaging to you and then from you is clear and it's concise. The other part is you want to stay informed. You need to make sure the people below you are keeping you informed. I've always used the term, keep me on the pulse of what's happening on the situation, on scene, in the community. Keep me as if I'm there, right? The one thing leaders want to do, they want to respond sometimes to a situation. They want to be right there, boots on the ground with the people doing the work. Sometimes you get in the way as a leader. And so you have to recognize does it make sense for me to stay away, or does it make sense for me to be there? And if you stay away, you want to make sure that you're kept informed, right? You need to know what's going on, and that's just through communication. One of the things you have to recognize when you're the leader is you do not want to have your employees put sending you the information priority over taking care of the community. Again, the community should always be first. So you want to make sure you send them the message that you have to have the pulse on the information of what's going on, but that should not overtake what their responsibilities are to take care of the community. So it's important to stay informed, but it's also important to make sure that your subordinates understand that they have a responsibility to take care of the community first and then brief you so you have the information of what's going on, because you don't want that your employees to not take care of the community just to get you the information first. So, and that happens a lot because of fear through employees, because they feel like, well, my boss is saying he or she needs this information, so let me do that first before I take care of the community. No, take care of the community first, and once that's done, send the information through the chain of command or up to me so I understand what's going on, and I can provide a good sound communication out to my constituents. So it's very important to find that balance to stay informed. Communicating after a crisis, it's so important to continue to provide updates. Providing updates is important. So we've all been through those crises, weather crises. I know in Florida, we've always taken the position of, regardless if the hurricane comes through, after the storm, we're providing information out to the community. If FEMA's still with us, or any organization still with us, or even what the tribal programs are doing, we want to make sure that communication stays out even after the crisis, because just because the crisis passed doesn't mean we have to stop communicating with the community. We want the community to know and be confident in the good work that our employees do in our organization. So we want to provide clear updates and constant updates after the crisis has stopped or it's past us. We want to acknowledge the impacts. Be very clear of what's impacted in your organization and in your community, so the community understands what you're going through. Right? They want to know, not necessarily to get involved, but they just want to know. And a lot of times that information that you provide to the community, letting them know the impacts of the community, they actually come out of the woodwork and they want to ask what they can do to help. Right? And that's where they're going to offer support to you. Right? You may or may not need that, but sometimes it's good to have that support for the employee base, and you want that reassurance to your employees they're doing a good job. And who better to tell the employees they're doing a good job is the community that they're serving. Really, that's really the success of leadership, is getting work done through others, getting it to the community and the people we serve, and then the people that we serve coming back and letting the employees know that they appreciate that work that's being done. That really represents that type of leader that you want to be. The other part is you want to look forward. You want to communicate what the future looks like, what you're doing in the future, what they can expect from you as the leader in the future. You want to make sure you give that outlook as far as what they can look for a community. So you don't want it to be just off the cliff. If the crisis goes and then the community's like, well, what happened with everybody? Where's all the communication? You want to make sure the community knows what you're going through, because although the crisis goes through, you as a leader, you're still dealing with that crisis after it goes through. Keep your community informed and let them travel the journey with you so they understand it's not easy being a leader. It's not easy being at the top. However, you're saying that because you need their support. You want them to support you. You want them to recognize that you have a good quality team behind you as the leader, and you're doing it all for them to make them better. So we want to look at crisis communication behind the basics. So far we talked about the principles of crisis communication. However, it's crucial to remember that's just the beginning, is communicating. We need to continuously learn, adapt, and redefine our skills, which is essential to our success. And through that process and our success, we look at our resources. We look at our resources and we can look at, what next steps we have to do. So as a leader, you want to know what your resources are. You want to explore those resources to figure out what your capabilities are when you're developing your plan. You want to craft your plan, for the best interests of the community. You want to craft that plan to where it's going to work for you. A lot of times, we take the easy way out as leaders because somebody else went through something and they developed a plan. Well, that plan was developed for their community or their organization. You have the opportunity to take that plan, use that plan, but you want to tailor that plan so it's for you as the leader, and it's for you as you progress through. It's for the community you serve. So you want to develop your plan, and then you want to take that plan and you want to engage it with conducting communication exercises and test those communications, right? So it's easy for people to sit around and drink coffee and just talk about things, right? When there's no pressure. You want to put people in pressure situations and see how they respond. It's a lot different, and you will see when you do practice drills or you put people in positions. Communicating under stress is not something everybody can do, and if you've never encountered it before, you have to practice it. So you, as the leader, need to put individuals in a position that they can feel that pressure, feel that stress, and then figure out what they need to do to navigate that to be successful. It's important to be prepared. Being prepared for a crisis is not just having a plan. You want to be prepared so you can cultivate a culture that is above reproach. You want your community to know what that plan is. That plan is going to bring resiliency to you. It's going to bring that sense of security during whatever challenging time that they have. And it's important that your community knows that you have a plan, and that plan starts with you as a leader. Communication during crisis, building resiliency. Effective crisis communication builds resiliency within a community. You want to empower your people in your community. You want to foster collaboration between programs, and you want to strengthen those bonds, right? And by doing that, it's not something that you can check a box and say, okay, I did it today, I strengthened the bonds. That is a constant effort that you have to do every day. Every day you come in, you should be looking at building resiliency in your organization, not only from the top tier of the organization, all the way down to the bottom and across from left to right of all your programs. By building that, you're going to build a core team that when the crisis hits, everybody's already going to start from the same page. So you want to make sure you build up your team on an everyday basis, that the threat isn't there. Bring them together as the leader, let them sit down, get to know each other, get to know the strengths and weaknesses of their programs, and then help them identify what needs to be done as a solution to strengthen that resiliency. So a lot of times leadership at the top, regardless if it's a tribal leader or a government leader, is we rely on people below us and we assume that the programs are ready. There's nothing wrong with you as a leader saying, hey, I want to sit down with your staff, bring your staff together, and let them walk through what their responsibilities are in the crisis, and just sit and listen, right? As a leader, you don't have to be the one who always talks. You can be that one to sit and listen, and you will see the reward being a leader, that your individuals that work for you understand the plan, understand what they're going through, what their responsibilities are. And you will also see those areas that will help you be a better leader, that you can give direction, you can give advice, you can be that one to kind of bring everybody together, because not everybody gets along. There's silos that are out there in every organization. You as a leader have to be the one to break those silos to continue to build resiliency when it comes to your programs. Let's talk about crafting messages to connect to the people you serve, right? So again, as I indicated earlier, you want to be empathetic. You want to look at the language that you're using to reach your audience, right? It's a very emotional time when they're going through crisis. So you want to make sure that you're not using trigger words that's going to add into their crisis. So pay attention to your messaging. Don't just think that you're going to be able to write one message and just get out there and put it out. Take the time to reread, let somebody else read it, ask them what their opinion is, and give it to somebody who's going to tell you that this is good or this is bad, you need to change this, you need to change that. Provide that opportunity to allow somebody to be the critiquer of the message. So the empathy does come out, but you're not saying trigger words that's going to spark anything within your community and your messaging. You want to be clear, you want to be concise. Ensure your message is easily understood. Again, we talked about writing your message not through your eyes, but write your message through their eyes. It's very important to always be positive and to provide that hope and resiliency when times are difficult in your community. So you want to make sure you're recognizing what the community is feeling. You want to make sure that you recognize your messaging is going to connect with the community itself. The last thing you want to do is put something out to where the community has more questions than what you put out, than answers than what you put out. So when you send your messaging out, you want to make sure that you're sending it out to answer their questions, let them know that you as the leader are the one that's in control, you have a handle of everything that's going on, and that you're positive and you're confident everybody's going to get through it. The other part of that is there's nothing wrong after you put your message out is to go back out into the community or into your workforce and ask them, for feedback of what the message, how you thought that message went out. Did they understand it? Is there something that they want to see in your messaging that can help them next time for your next message? Get people's feedback as you go through the crisis, and you will always improve on that service delivery that you're providing to the community. One of the things that you can do before the crisis is build community trust through communications. As we all know, trust is the foundation of being effective when you're in crisis communication. People trust their leaders and their institutions, are more likely to follow guidance, stay informed, and support recovery efforts if they have confidence in the communication. So it's vital to build and prioritize your communication to make sure it's authentic. A couple of areas that you can do this with before the crisis is you can have meetings with your community and your employees, right? So you can have separate meetings with your audience. For instance, if you sit down and you have, like, on a Friday, let the employees have an opportunity to have a round table with you where you're sitting around, you're just having coffee, you're not barking out orders as the leader or talking about direction. You're allowing them to speak on how the organization can be better, how the communication can be better, and you're doing it in a non-threatening setting where people feel comfortable to speak. You have to recognize that the people that you serve, regardless if it's employees or the community, they need that opportunity to filter out their thought process. They may not always be accurate, or they may not be fully informed, but you want to hear that. You want to provide that foundation where they can speak and have a voice. Because if they have a voice, then they're going to take ownership of what the mission of the organization is going to be, and they're going to develop a better work product to the community you serve. So you want to be able to lead them through crisis. So by providing them that opportunity to meet, to let you see that they know what the expectations are through your leadership. And it gives you the opportunity also to provide what those expectations are when you're going through those meetings. So you want to make sure that you can build that trust in a non-threatening setting. You don't get that message across in the middle of a crisis. So you as the leader have to sit back when in the non-threatening setting, and you want to sit back and build that trust before that crisis happens. Because if you can build that trust with the community and your workforce before the crisis happens, when it happens, they're still going to follow you because they've seen you, that you've built that trust up, and they're going to have that confidence in you that you're going to keep them informed and you're going to help them through the recovery process. Responding to misinformation or rumors. This is something that you're going to deal with regardless if it's an average day or in a crisis. There's a lot of misinformation that goes out there. There's a lot of rumors that are spread. And during a crisis, it spreads even faster because, as I talked about earlier, you have individuals who just put information out and they may not have the facts, right? Because they heard something, they put it on Facebook or they put it through social media, and now it's taken a life of its own. It's crucial to have a plan on how to address those challenges, right? You want to explain that the negativity of rumors and misinformation has an impact on the overall operation. It makes employees' jobs harder. It makes the community's job harder because people that really are looking for accurate information are being provided misinformation or rumors. So in your plan, you want to make sure that you have a direction or a framework on how you're going to deal with that, right? And sometimes you have to come out very, very curt and very strong to let people know that You don't want them listening to false information. And then anytime false information is being put out, you're going to provide an update that clarifies the information, that's more reliable. And that's where that trust comes in. If people have trust in you, they're not going to listen to the rumors or the misinformation. They know that you're going to come out, you're going to call it a rumor, you're going to call it misinformation, but you're going to provide them the right information, so you continue that trust. And that's really where that solution is, to mitigate misinformation and rumors, is to stay in front, to identify when somebody puts something silly out or something that is not accurate. You as the leader have the opportunity that you can assist them as you navigate the crisis. You can assist them to make sure they listen to the right information and they're provided the right information as you navigate forward. Now, the role of the tribal leader during crisis communication, you have the most critical role, because you as the leader, people look at you to shape the public perception, right? They look at you to provide that response during the crisis, right? So you have to be visible and accessible towards the community, right? You have to be transparent. The last thing you can do as a leader is go underground. And sometimes leaders go underground because of not maliciously, but they go underground because they don't know what to do, right? You're not going to know everything, but if you have people around you and you can take a team approach, you'll be able to get through anything that you're dealing with. I have the confidence in everybody, is that if you have good leadership around you, no matter how knowledgeable you are, if you're lacking in some areas, your leadership team will carry you to the finish line. So you want to make sure you don't go underground. You want to make sure that you stay out front and give people the confidence that you're the right person in that position, because you are the one who is going to shape the public's perception on how well that crisis is going or how bad that crisis is going. And your behavior is really the onus that's on your shoulders, is that you are the one that's going to dictate the temperature of that crisis, and it's how you do things and how you carry yourself. So you want to be visible, you want to be accessible, you want to be transparent with your communication, and you want to make sure you provide that clear direction to them, right? And do it in a calm, stability presentation that they're building and they're working off of your knowledge and your skills, and they can feed off of your emotion, they can feed off your leadership and your leadership style, and you'll get through whatever those issues are. Understand cultural nuances in communication. It's so important before the crisis happens, especially if you have non-tribal members that work for you in your organization, that everyone understands what the cultural values are and the cultural norms are and their traditions are. So you want to make sure in your communication plan that that's part of it. So one of the areas that you can put into play is that if you have an elder population that doesn't speak English, then you may have to tailor your communication to your language, right? So you may have to do a separate communication just to the elders for the purposes of they understand what's happening with the crisis. You may have a younger group that gets a little bit connects a little bit more with the younger society. You may want to develop a plan where you have somebody that works for you that is that person who's going to deal with the younger generation that they can connect with, and that puts that same message out. Remember, you don't always have to be that person who puts the message out. You can be that person who directs the message, and whoever's communicating that message out is doing it based on your expectations, your direction, and they're doing it as if you were the one doing it. So you want to look at, when you look at your cultural nuances in your community, make sure that's part of your policy. If your policy or your tribe doesn't allow your cultural or traditional values to be put in writing, make sure your employees go through constant training on your policies, your traditional policies, or your traditional values, so they understand. So when the crisis happens, they know exactly what to expect when it comes to your culture in the community when they're dealing with your members. Communication strategies are different when it comes to different scenarios, right? So every scenario is not the same. When in Florida, we would use a different type of approach when we looked at a Hurricane 1 versus a Hurricane 5, right? We knew a Hurricane 1, if it hit anywhere in the state of Florida, it may impact one or two reservations. If it's a Hurricane 5, we know every one of the 10 locations across the state of Florida is most likely going to be impacted by that Hurricane 5. So our communication plan was different based on the specific scenario. So before your crisis hits, regardless if it's a hurricane, a human-caused disaster, or a natural disaster, or even just an active shooter or an employee crisis, you want to make sure that you develop your communication strategies beforehand. So you need to sit down with your staff and come up with ideas and project things that could happen, right? Hopefully they never do, but sitting around a table and having those conversations so you can develop that framework, right? Just a framework on how you're going to communicate with different scenarios and what that plan is going to be, right? So our communication for the purposes of a Hurricane 1 was we only dealt with that reservation that was getting the information. We made sure that reservation had certain information provided to them because they were the ones that's going to be impacted. The 9 other locations may not have gotten some of the information just because they didn't need to know that. They weren't impacted, and we wanted to make sure our resources were put all towards the reservation that was going to be impacted. During a Hurricane 5, all hands on deck. We had communication on all 10 properties. We were communicating with the communities. We were communicating with the gaming facilities and other business entities that allowed us to make sure that they were on the same page with us. So you want to make sure when you look at your strategies for the community, what is going to be best for you in the community that you serve. You also want to look at the timing. You want to look at how you're communicating, how many times a day you're communicating, how many times a day do you feel that information should be put out. You know, we all watch news media on TV, and the news may do a press conference once a day, right? Usually we would do 2 times a day. We would put out communication two times a day, sometimes 3, depending on the severity of the crisis, because we wanted to make sure the community was involved. You know, not necessarily does tribal governments go in front of the news cameras. You may have your own local news, tribal news cameras, but just for the community basis, you want to make sure that your communication strategies are in place that's going to help your community. And only you as the subject matter expert is the one that is able to look at what's going to be successful within your community. You want to leverage technology, right? You want to make sure your satellite phones are in working order. You want to make sure you have the ability to use social media, to use all the platforms, text messaging, and any online portals, right? Information is power. So if you can use technology before the crisis and understand what your communication plan is going to be when you look at the databases of technology, that's going to be a win for you. One of the things that I think people take for granted is the information. Data is important, right? More important is the accuracy of that data. So you want to make sure that the information is the most up-to-date information that you can get, right? So if it's annually or biannually, you're confirming the information as far as phone numbers, emails. When people move, they're updating their information. So you want to make sure that that data is the most up-to-date data. So when you put it in technology, it's reaching as many people as you can, right? And I think sometimes we take for granted, because social media is kind of at our fingertips, we take for granted that the information is correct. If I had to sit and ask all of you to shut your phones off and then give me a list of 10 people that 10 people in your phone, and then if I ask you what their phone numbers are you going to be able to tell me what their phone numbers are without going and looking at your phone? I know I couldn't do that because I'm so programmed now that they're in my phone. All I have to do is hit their name and it's going to call, right? I could probably tell you 1, 2, or 3 people that the phone numbers of individuals that I know, but the reality is I don't have that information. So we want to make sure that you not only have it digitally, you want to make sure your plan has a hard copy, and it's the most up-to-date hard copy of emails, phone numbers, just in case you have to go to brick and mortar and the old way of doing things. So you want to make sure that that information is most up to date, but you also have a hard copy that'll allow you to use if you need it. Ensuring accessibility, inclusivity, and communication. Communication during a crisis always has to be accessible to your members. You want to make sure that they know where to get information, right? So you want to make sure that through that process, you have the ability to provide the information to them beforehand. So if your community understands exactly where they can get information when the crisis happens, they know you're going to deliver it right to those locations. So if they know your platforms you're using, they know the text messages they're going to get, they know what portal to go to. If they know where to get it, they'll go there. But you need to make sure that they know that before the crisis happens, so they're not learning it as the crisis is going on. Building networks of communication partners. It's very important to understand what partners you need to use when it comes to your outlets, right? So you could use media outlets, you could use government agencies. You know, one of the things that we looked at for the Seminole Tribe is we have a lot of population that live off the reservation around the country. How do we get the information to them for their local areas? So that was emergency management's responsibility, was to find out where we were getting that information so we can deliver it to tribal members that live off the reservation, either around the state of Florida or around the country. So we needed to know those communication partners. So we developed a relationship with the National Weather Service throughout the country, not just in Florida, because National Weather Service is spread out in different jurisdictions. So we developed relationships with everybody around the country so we could provide that information to tribal members. If they didn't live in a reservation in Florida, we were able to communicate with the National Weather Service or public safety people around the country to where we were able to deliver the tribal members information that may impact them. So you want to look at that network of communication partners and put that in your plan. Make sure that's in your plan so you can just flip the switch and you can have that communication with those other entities. It's important to be continuously learning, right? So you always want to have a learning organization which will help you through challenges, right? You want to look at the crisis communication in a dynamic direction, right? It requires you to always improve what you're doing. You as a leader, sometimes you get to a point where everyone's expecting you to have the answers. So you live in a world of overconfidence, right? Because they're expecting you to have an answer, so you think you're the end all be all, right? We've all been in those positions, right? Sometimes that's a negative that can hurt us, right? There's things that as leaders we can damage ourselves, which will ultimately damage the community as we progress forward. Some of the things that we can do to damage ourselves is we can be overconfident, right? As leaders, we become overconfident and we shut out the reality around us. So we're kind of playing in our own sandbox while everybody else is sitting looking at something different. So we want to make sure we gauge ourselves so we don't become too overconfident. We could live in an echo chamber. And what I say by echo chamber, that means surrounding people around us who are yes, yes, right? No matter what we say, we're always right. And they're always telling us we're right. You don't want to be in the echo chamber to where people are just telling you what you want to hear, right? You want them to provide feedback to you that is something that you can work with, right? If people are always telling you that you're right and you always have the right answer, you're probably wrong, right? So you need to, as the leader, recognize the fact you don't want to be in an echo chamber where people are just telling you that you're always right. You want to look at fear, right? You may fall for the fear or vulnerability, right? And what that means is that people are around you, but you're worried about looking weak, right? It's okay to look weak, right? The key is how you're dealing with that weakness, right? People know you're not perfect. So at times your weaknesses are going to be exposed, right? The key is how are you rebounding? How are you developing and strengthening that weakness? So you want to make sure that you don't fall for that feel of vulnerability where you're worried about people thinking that you're weak, right? Always provide transparent, quality leadership, recognizing that you have shortcomings as well. The other area that shows weakness is the constraints of the job. The job is so moving so fast, and there's so much pressure to it that the demands of the job put you in a position to where you're not necessarily seeing factual around you. So you want to make sure that you take a breath, you slow down, give yourself an opportunity to analyze, really what you're seeing is factual. Complacency is another issue. Sometimes things don't happen where we get complacent, and then when that bell rings, we have a hard time, standing up to the challenge. So we want to make sure complacency doesn't set in. We want to focus on short-term goals, right? But focus on short-term goals can also be detrimental to us. We want to balance that out for short-term goals and long-term goals. We want to make sure there's a consistent and both sides, short-term and long-term goals, get the same amount of attention, from us. So that way we don't fall just for looking at short-term goals, right? Another part that can be challenging for us is resistance to change. People don't like change. We like to be in our comfort zone. We like just that normal pattern, right? Resistance to change can impact us, and it could hurt us during crisis management. So we want to look at the fact of making sure that resistance to change is not hampering our ability to do our job right? How do we counteract all these pitfalls? By continuously improving our knowledge, skills, and ability, and we do that by continuous education and continuous development. Just because we're in the leadership position doesn't mean that we have all the answers and that we don't have to stop learning or training. You want to continuously improve yourself, and by doing that, you can always go to educational courses, training and development courses, and you want to make sure you do that. So you're at the top of your game, and the information you're putting out is the most relevant when it comes to your leadership style. As we look at some case studies, there's case studies that you've all developed in the past, or your tribes have been through, or other tribes have been through, or governments around you have been through. Ask for their after action reports. I challenge all of you to work with your neighbors, your other tribal programs, get their after action reports and read them. Read what they went through, read what they've learned, what they did good, what they did not so good, and then use that information to help build a good core communication plan for you as the tribal leader. You want to make sure you have your tribal leaders or your tribal legal department around you. It's so important as a leader that you have that guidance, right? Attorneys are there to guide you, provide that information to you that's going to protect you, right? Your tribal sovereignty is important. And through that importancy, you want to make sure you're communicating and you're communicating effectively. You don't want to jeopardize your sovereignty. You don't want to jeopardize the mission, but you also need to communicate out, right? So by having your legal advisors near you, running stuff by them, letting them read your media release or your social media release, just to get impact or advice, right? Attorneys are there to give you advice. Let them provide advice to you, because at the end of the day, during a crisis, there may be some litigation that occurs afterwards, and you don't want any of your communication to be used against you later on. You want to make sure that all your messaging is on point. It's in the best interest of the community, and without hiding anything. You want to make sure it's transparent. But sometimes your delivery, your attorneys can provide a good opportunity and a good direction on your delivery. So that's a piece of wisdom that you want to make sure is right beside you as you navigate through your crisis communication. One of the things that we can't plan for is really the unexpected, right? So we always have to keep an open mind that crisis can occur at any time and any place. We have to be proactive, and by being proactive, we develop the plans and the strategies for potential scenarios, right? So sitting around the room at the conference table or the coffee pot, just asking people their opinion and looking at the different range of emergencies that you can be impacted by, or looking around what others are going through, can help you through that unexpected path. And that unexpected path can provide an opportunity for you to build out your plan, put your plan in place with those unexpected crises that occur. You may have a plan in your crisis plan that the crisis may not occur, but you can use that specific plan to help you navigate some other crisis. So it's important for you to do the what if and allow yourself to navigate what ifs, hoping they never happen, but it provides you that opportunity to navigate unexpected crises. And we do that every day. The reality is we all usually travel the same way to our homes, right? If the road gets blocked, you probably know what direction you need to go to your house, right? Without you thinking about it, you already have a plan if the path is blocked on the way to your home after work, right? Because over time, you subconsciously develop the plan. What I'm suggesting to you is consciously develop the plan as if, the same scenario is, how do you get to your house if the road is blocked or if the direction you take every day home is blocked? You already know that plan because you've subconsciously know the roads, the path, the direction you can go to get to your house. There's more than one way to do that. Do that same philosophy, but purposely for crises. So look at all the different types of crises you could have and create at least a framework that will assist you through that plan. Again, cultural values have an important piece. We talked about earlier, making sure that your employee base knows you need to recognize as the leader that it is good to incorporate those values within the plan and everything you do. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's something that starts at the top. It starts at the top tier. So if you want cultural values and traditions to be put in plans and to be part of your everyday operation, to include crisis operation, you as the leader, the tribal leader at the top, you need to make sure that you're sending that message out. Building a culture of communication. Look, we're going to get more done if you build a culture of communication. You're going to get more work done. You're going to get effective work done, and your community is going to evolve, and it's going to be better for the people that live in your community. Non-threatening, informal meetings, non-threatening coffee opportunities, lunch opportunities. You can do a coffee with the leader. In public safety, we would always do pancakes with public safety. We would bring people to the community. They may only want to come for the pancakes, but at least it gives you the opportunity for you to have that audience. You do coffee with a cop. You can do a lot of different things to bring the community to you. And once you have them there, then you want to build that community involvement. You want to build that culture of communication. So just get them to the table, and that's really the key. So sometimes it's challenging, and sometimes, just like playing baseball, the first pitch that comes to you, you may swing and miss. That's okay. You got 2 more pitches. So if you plan something, the community doesn't come, don't give up. Keep trying, because it's all about the community. It's all about having them at the table. It's all about having them be part of the process, because that's what's going to make you successful, is having them part of the process. Lastly, the power of storytelling is important, and by putting them at the table, I think that gives you the opportunity not only for you to share stories, but the historical stories that people have. We can learn from each other, and by having storytelling time, allowing people to voice their own experiences, their own narratives, you can relate and you can pick things out of everybody's story to help you build a communication plan. So it's important that as you go through the process of communicating with your community, give them the opportunity to have a voice, give them the opportunity to be inspired by your leadership. And by bringing them to the table, it's going to show that you're not living in a silo, that your leadership is based on them being part of it, them being an important part of it, and you want them to be able to provide feedback to you so you can provide the best level of leadership to make their community safe and get them through any crisis. As you move forward, you want to make sure you look at the strategies that affect the crises within your community. I can't encourage you enough to continue to stay on a learning path, regardless if you're the tribal leader at the top, a politician, or the lowest leader at the bottom. You're all leaders, and a leader gets work done through others. And in order for you to be effective, you always have to be at the top of your game. And by continuously to learn, share information, share stories, collaborate with each other, it's going to build an environment where you're going to be more resilient, and you can communicate that with the community, and you can listen to their feedback to help build a strong plan. This is our contact information here on the right side. It's in the slides that Native Learning Center has put out in the PowerPoint that I believe you all got. And I just want to thank you for tuning in today. The week's almost over for you. You've made it over half the week. So I hope you all have a great afternoon with your family. I look forward to completing the fourth webinar tomorrow. Hopefully you can join us. And I wish you and your family a healthy and happy afternoon. In your environment, wherever you are across the country. Miss Atkins, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Will. You did an incredible job. We really appreciate your time today, and I appreciate everyone for joining us as well. If you could please fill out the feedback form, Will greatly appreciates this. It lets him know what you guys would like to see in the future. I went ahead and already submitted the link. It is anonymous. Don't forget to join us for day 4 tomorrow. It will be at 2 p.m. EST, 1 p.m. CST, 12 p.m. MST, 11 a.m. PST, and 10 a.m. Alaska time. If you have not seen day 1, day 2, or day 3, or you missed part of day 3, you can rewatch all of these webinar recordings on our YouTube channel under the Cathedral Webinars archive, and you can catch up on all of them there. You can check out our upcoming events on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Don't forget, we also have a podcast called Hope Within a Native American Podcast, and you can listen to us on YouTube as well, and Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, and Simplecast. I just want to thank everyone once again for joining us today, and thank you, Will. We greatly appreciate it. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.